Well, welcome back. Today, I am happy to have a return guest. I don't always, not everybody who is a guest on this show get asked back, as you all know. In fact, there's been a few recently. I went back and actually pulled their episodes down because where they're, where they are now in life does not align with the core values of Close It Now. But this gentleman is not the case. I am so happy to have him back on the show. If you caught the last episode, if you didn't catch the last episode, make sure to go back and listen. This is Mr. Doug C. Brown. He is the founder and CEO of CEO Sales Strategies. And so the last episode, we really dove in on follow up. So make sure to go back and check out that episode. He also has a really incredible product that he has developed that is constantly in develop. I'll just give you the super quick nutshell, everybody. Personally, I bought it for my business and it's been a game changer. It's a AI driven CRM slash follow up program that is unlike anything I've ever seen. So it's really cool. It's being developed and it's got some incredible features. So if you don't have a CRM for your company, reach out. It's called Vabitno, and it'll be in the show notes here. And happy to get you connected to Doug to talk about that. But today, we're going to give you all a little bit of a sneak peek of this gentleman is going to have 90 minutes at the Ultimate Sales Transformation event in Boston that is May 6th, 7th, and 8th. For most of you listening to the show, there's a good chance it will be that will have happened before you hear this episode. So you will have missed out. So, but be on the lookout. I'm sure this is not the last thing that this gentleman and I will do together. But super quick highlight reel. He has had a massive history. He has taken so many companies to exit. I think that the official number is over 30 companies that you've grown and sold. Is that correct, Doug?
Well, I haven't sold them all. I mean, I've been involved in 36 companies. Some actually crashed and burned, Sam,
Okay.
in the process. But
Hey,
yeah,
that
so
sounds like a
third.
whole nother episode we can do on the pitfalls of what that
Yeah.
happens, right?
What do you do when you crash and burn? Yeah, no.
But so founder of over 30 companies, or at least been involved in that many in some level of management and ownership,
Yeah.
and just such an incredible person. His time is insanely valuable, so I'm grateful that you joined us on the show today. And just want to give everybody an opportunity to hear more from you and to learn more about what you're doing, and give them the opportunity to dive in if they resonate and something that you can help them with. So welcome
Okay.
back to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. As always, I'm grateful.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So so we were talking before this episode here, and you mentioned something to me that asking if I thought that people would be interested in hearing what we were talking about. So uh, take a second and just introduce what we were talking about, basically the same way that you introduced it to me. Nice and nonchalant, as if this wasn't a big needle mover. So, when everybody listening, when you hear this, you'll know what I mean by that.
Yeah, so thanks. I hope I can do it in the same capacity, you know. So so I'm getting a little older now, right? And I start questioning life and say, well, what do I really want to do when I grow up, right? I
Mhm.
mean, Um, and when you said, that many companies, I actually just got involved in two other companies um that were doing that I have ownership in.
Mhm.
And as I get a little older, I just look at what's going on in the world and I'm like, all right, how do I do my part to make it a little bit better, right? Or a
Mhm.
lot better for people. And what I'm really, 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 really good at is helping people make money through selling,
Mhm.
right? And doing it in an ethical win-win, place. So I was driving down the road the other day with my wife, and I said, you know what I'd really like to do? I'd like to take people, anybody who's selling or they want to sell, if they're currently selling or they have sales team members, I said, we can help them in almost every case. It really doesn't matter. I've worked in over
Mhm.
300 industries. Excuse me. We can help them make an extra $100,000 in income per
Whew.
year,
Mhm.
right? And, if we screw up and they make a couple hundred or quarter million, I mean, that's great, right? I mean, and I say this not from a place of arrogance. It's just we have a system to do it.
Hmm.
If I don't cough all the way through this episode, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Yeah,
But,
this.
and so Sam, I mean, I literally like my big one was one time the epiphany. The guy went from 140,000 a year in sales
Hmm.
commissions to 2.1 million in sales commission in his first
Ooh,
year
in a single year. What
in a
a
single
serious.
year.
Yeah, that's more than 10xing.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't subscribe to the 10x philosophy like that people have because,
Sure.
they get all pumped up about their 10x. And I'm like, well, let's say we went to the gym and you can bench press 200 pounds.
Hmm.
And now I take and I throw 2,000 pounds on the bar. It's probably not going to work,
No.
right? Um, but I do believe in incremental growth. So we
Hmm.
can get you from 200 to 205 to 210, and so on and so on. And in time, we can get you to 2x,
Sure.
maybe even 2.5x,
Hmm.
for, if you want to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger did in your early days and, or some power lifter, right?
Word.
Yeah.
That's been my mission lately.
But what I realize is for most people, and what's really bothering me in the world is, inflation keeps going up.
Hmm.
And, the average person now that starts to get up in age, and wanting to retire or whatever, their income, once it ceases and they go into retirement, liquidating their home, everything in the United States, they got an average of 8 to 12 years before they're out of money.
Ooh, that's rough.
And so what are you going to do? You retire at 65. By the time you're, 74, 75, you're like broke, right?
Yeah.
So,
Then you're Walmart
well,
greeter
that's
at that point.
that's not retirement. That's not good, right? So I started thinking about, well, what if I help those people? And many of them were professionals in life, whatever. But if I teach them how to sell, they can sell. And what if I could, help them like, so I called like 32 CEOs
Hmm.
of companies that I've worked with in the past. And I said, look, if I train these people the right way, if they know how to prospect, they know how to sell, they know how to close, they know how to do all these things, they play win-win, they won't be a pain. You might have to teach them your maybe you're a roofing company or you're a medical supply company or you're whatever. You're gonna have to, you know, teach them the discipline and train them because you don't need that much in order to sell certain things, right?
Sure.
Um, would you hire them? And they go, absolutely. I'll
Hmm.
take as many as you can give me.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, okay. So like, I don't want to be a recruiting company. They're like, it's fine. I just want to help these people, right?
Hmm.
And so what I realized is they're paying 20% to recruiters to recruit people. And then the average recruiter coming in doesn't really work out well. And like, I can, if they want to pay me for it, I was like, well, cool, I get a little extra money, right? But I can help these people.
Hmm.
Then I started thinking, what about the kids coming up?
Sure.
My daughters are in their 20s and their friends are getting into jobs and they're like saying things like, I got to move out of this community to move into this community in order to, there's two of us in this apartment now, and
Hmm.
there's going to be three of us in this apartment in this other community. And we got to do it because that's how we can survive.
Yeah, it takes multiple incomes just to exist for most people at this point in life.
Yeah. And then
Sadly.
one of their friends is in sales and she's, making about 70,000 a year. And I'm like, what happens if I can get her to go from 70,000 to 170,000?
Yeah,
Right.
what a life change.
Yeah, and by the way, some of these communities they're moving to, you know, you wouldn't want your children living in those communities, Sam.
Ooh,
I
no
know
way.
you well enough to know, right? And I
Hmm.
certainly wouldn't want my daughters living in those communities, right? Because
Sure.
there's a high crime rate in these places.
Hmm.
So I just drew the line in the sand the other night, and I'm like, this is what we're going to do. I can help corporations, I can help all that, and I have. I mean, I've worked with Procter and Gamble, CBS Television, Intuit,
Hmm.
the name goes on, right?
Right.
But I don't, that's not my mission in life any longer. My mission is to help the solo entrepreneur or help the people who are in, like if companies have sales teams and they want their whole team to grow, I'd be happy to do that as well. It doesn't mean I won't do corporate work. If they call me, obviously I'm not dumb. They pay me enough.
Sure.
Um,
If there's
but
if there's enough zeros, that's harder
yeah,
to say
exactly.
no
That'll
to.
get my
Correct.
attention, right? Because believe it or not, at this point in my life, some of those zeros now go to the kids and then to the grandkids eventually. And so
Mhm.
it's like I don't get it anyways, but I get the pleasure of getting them. Um, and so yeah, that's what we do. And we affectionately called it the 2X method,
Hmm.
2X sales revenue growth sales method.
Hmm.
And the difference between what we teach is it's not about just sales training. It's about how do you grow your revenue?
Hmm.
How do you do it predictably?
Right.
And how do you do it that it will take effort, but you're doing it in an effective way that's efficient. And so it's a whole system. And then, it's all based on metrics and math as well.
Hmm.
So it doesn't lie. You can figure out where you are and where you need to go
Sure.
pretty quickly by just measuring all these things.
There's two words that you just said that really stuck out to me. One is predictable,
Right.
and the other is efficiently. Because, like so many people, until they start learning some of these processes and methods, and I know that I'm going to learn a ton today as well, so I'm really excited. I've got my notepad ready. But you know, the old idea and the old concept is, well, you have to work harder to make more. And it's learning the difference between growing and scaling. If I just double my number of hours, well, I'll double my income. Well, yeah, but at what cost? And
Right.
then we just max out, and then there's nothing left. And so I love where you're headed with this. So, and for everybody listening to, I have no idea what we're about to cover. So I'm just as excited as you are.
Well, I don't either. So let's figure it out, right?
Hey, let's go.
Um,
This is how we like to do.
so yeah, I mean, predictability comes from mastering the metrics and measurements. So, like I'm the one of the companies I'm working with right now that I'm become part owner in. I'll give you an example. They're generating a boatload of leads.
Hmm.
I mean, 10,000 leads a month sometimes,
Holy moly.
right? And then I'm looking at the conversion rates and the close rates. Close rates not too bad. The conversion rates way too low.
Mm,
So the conversion rates, so those who may not know how many leads you're producing to how many sales, the close rate, how many conversations to sales.
sure.
And so when I started digging, I'm like, all right, so what's happening is they're getting a ton of leads coming through. Then they basically have a setter SDR type process that goes into that.
Hmm.
And the setters are getting a bunch of these leads, but the offer to the setter is off.
Mm,
And so people are coming to these calls going, I thought I was getting this.
hmm.
And now you're talking to me about that. And
Sure.
that now leads to another phone call. They're like, I'm a little confused, like I'm
Hmm.
confused or like,
So some misalignment there for sure.
yeah. And so how do we find that? We look at the metrics.
Hmm.
Right? So it's like how many leads come in to how many people are showing to appointments or not showing to
Mm,
appointments, how many people are showing to appointments or moving to the next stage of that appointment. And when we look at all these metrics, it starts to tell a story. It's like, wait a minute, there's way too many leads going into this thing, getting stuck in some capacity, not
hmm.
moving to the next stage. So then it's like, how do you know? Through the math, and then what do you do about it? Well, you investigate it, right?
Hmm.
And I've done this for very like even famous companies or famous people, like, and I mean, it never, ever, ever is wrong.
Hmm.
And I mean that not because I'm braggadocious or arrogant,
Sure.
but when you look at the numbers, like
Well, the numbers
some
don't lie.
no, so I'll give you an extreme example. Like Chet Holmes, he wrote a
Hmm.
book called The Ultimate Sales Machine. Chet was a really nice guy.
Funny you mentioned that. I literally today started that audiobook like 2 hours ago before we hopped on this call.
Well, most of that people in the book are friends of mine, or I know him pretty well. But and Chet, I was Chet's because Chet eventually merged with Tony Robbins. Actually, came in and bought into the company. So I was their president of training and sales for 7 years.
Wow, that's incredible.
And so when I first came to the company, I started looking at all the metrics. And Chet would come to me in the beginning and he would say, by the way, he's an awesome guy. He was an awesome guy before he passed away, and very smart. And he would come to me and he goes, look, we're 27% on the front end of this machine. Our leads are costing this. And by the time we get them through this, and then
Hmm.
it's like, I'm like, okay, so 27% loss. I'm like, well, how do we tighten that up if possible? So I looked at all the metrics, and one glaring things, two things actually stood out to me, but the big glaring one was so they were driving him from a radio ad to a paid training and what people would call a master class, but they were training on that.
Hmm.
It was really good content. And then from there, they would make an offer to bring him into coaching and
Hmm.
ongoing training. And it was a 15.3% refund rate on the paid training.
Ooh, refund rate.
Yeah.
That's a metric I didn't expect you to say, actually.
Yeah. Well, again, so like when we're figuring out numbers, like I'll step back for a second. Like when we're in a sales capacity and we're saying, hey, we need 100 sales to actually hit our number, let's say, right?
Hmm.
We need to figure out churn, return rates, refund rates,
Hmm.
cost of sale. Because let's say that was 15% combined, right? Which, by the way, would be super low. Um, if it was 15% combined with cost of sale and all these other things, then we would actually need 115 sales versus 100 sales to actually hit that number,
Hmm. Sure.
right?
Yeah, because you have to make up for those.
Yeah. And if I said to anybody, look, we're going to take, I don't know, what do they call those kite things, Sam, that you get in there, like, and you take like a kite ride, right? Like,
Oh, like a parasail or
yeah,
something like
yeah,
that?
something like a parasail, but that's with a parachute, but whatever
Oh,
hang
yeah, hang
gliding,
gliding.
that's what they
Yeah.
call it, right? If I said to people, look, I'm going to be your hang gliding pilot. Jump on here. We're going to jump off this, 3,000-foot cliff. We're going to go sail around. You're going to have an amazing time. And I may have calculated correctly to get you to the ground, or I might be 15% off.
I don't
Right?
have much confidence in you at that point.
What do you mean you're not coming with me? But right? And paying me for the ride. It's going to be exhilarating, right?
Hmm.
That type of thing.
It'll be thrilling one way or another.
But so many companies do this and so many people selling, they don't calculate the numbers. And so they're 15% or 20 or 30% short of the runway,
Mm.
right? Or they're not calculating the altitude correctly of the mountain,
Hmm.
and whack, and so
Sure.
they get there thinking, man, I'm going to make 150 grand, and now they're making 100 and whatever because it's 15%, 135 or whatever, the number happens to be. So they're short of the runway.
Hmm.
But that, I'm telling you, 15% is it's those numbers are small.
Sure.
But in his case, he had a 15%, 15.3% refund rate. So again, you look at the numbers, you figure it out, right? How many people are coming? How many people staying? How many people are refunding? All of these numbers tell a story. So then I started digging, and I was like, okay. And so I started calling some of the clients and asked them, why'd you refund? And they told me, and I started listening to the past recordings.
Hmm.
And what I realized was that in the presentation, they actually were inviting the refund.
Mm.
So here's what happened. They had this presentation and they were saying, because they guaranteed it, and they were saying right in the presentation, listen, if you don't think that we earned our money today, I just want you to call 1-800 get refund, whatever the number was, right?
Uh-huh.
And if you don't think we've earned our keep, if this did not exceed your expectations, beyond your wildest dreams, we'll refund your money. Call 1-800 get a refund.
Hey, at least they didn't have a double refund offer.
Yeah, that's true. And so 15% of the people would call in and they say, hey, I just didn't meet my expectations. But then I was like, wait a minute. These
Hmm.
people were actually getting really great results,
Hmm.
but we're refunding. So all I did, and this is why I'm trying to teach people about predictability, is all I did was I looked at that and I said, let's make a messaging change. So what we did is we got to the end of the training and we said, hey, why don't you go take 3 minutes now, go back through all the training. and figure out over the next 12 to 24 months, if you did these things that we talked about, what you would be getting in return
Hmm.
financially into your company. And then I would say something like, hey, Sam, what did you get? And you would say, I got $767,000 on this call.
Hmm.
And then I'd go, hey, Margot, what did you get? I got 1.27 million on this call. Hey, Ron, what did you get? I got 300,000. Hey, Barry, what did you get? I got
Hmm.
$14.3 million on this call, right? And we would go around the room.
Sure.
And so then we would add them up. I would have the presenter add them up. And then the presenter would say something like this. Okay, guys, we found $72,637,014 on this call. Everybody go, woohoo, because we were involved with
Yeah,
Tony
let's
Robbins,
celebrate
right?
it. Hmm.
And so they would go, woohoo. And then the next line was, well, I think we probably earned our keep today. What do you think, guys? And every one of them go, yes, yes,
Woohoo.
yes, right?
Hmm.
Within 3 days, the refund rate dropped from 15.3% to under 1%.
Woo.
Now, why is this predictable? Well, because now you got 15% of the people who are dropping out now moving to the next stage of the funnel,
Wow.
the mid funnel, where they were being sold
Hmm.
between $1,500 and $12,500.
Sure. So not only did you recoup the loss of what was happening, the churn there, then we moved on to the next stage for the continued customer journey, and so now we start talking about the lifetime value of a client, which is a whole
Absolutely.
different conversation.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And if you don't get them from stage one to stage two to stage three to stage four, and so on and so on and so on, say five, six, seven, right? Depending on
Hmm.
how many steps there are in the customer journey, then you're having fallout happening within your life. So what does that mean? It means you're working harder.
Hmm.
You got 15.3% you got to make up on, right?
Hmm.
But you have a cost of sale to that initial, and you have a cost of refund. So if you're taking a credit card and you're spending 3.5% or 3% and then 3% paying it back,
Hmm.
you got 6% of that 15%. You get the numbers, right? The
Hmm.
numbers start stacking. And never mind what it costs you to put this person on to make the sale initially, and now they all these things factor into play. So from a company perspective, when you have a sales team, it's like it starts adding up really fast. From an individual perspective, it adds up fast too. And so the second metric that I found was follow up, what you
Hmm.
started talking about, right?
Hmm.
So I was looking at the front end numbers and I'm like, wait a minute, these numbers don't make sense. They're saying that they have a 21% conversion, like it's 21.92, I think, percent conversion rate.
Hmm.
It doesn't make sense. I'm looking at the numbers. So I got a 12.6% conversion rate.
Hmm.
So I'm looking, and then on the close rate of the front end of the sales team. So then I look at the numbers and I go back and Sam, sure as heck, last year, 17,000 leads had not been followed up on
Oh, oh, that's painful when you say it like that.
at $13 a lead.
Jeez Louise.
All right. And so, oh, it got worse when you went back over the last 2 years.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah.
But But so then I went and I talked to the sales manager and I said, tell me how you're qualifying these leads. And then she told me how they were qualifying the leads. And I was like, that's not a qualification process. You're basically dumping leads and
Hmm.
creaming the best leads to get the highest conversion rate. What about all these other leads? So then I put a stop to that. And then when we were bringing salespeople in, new salespeople, they had to call through all those leads and get two sales out of those leads. And Sam, some of these leads were turning into like 35 to $50,000 purchases.
No
And
doubt.
so what ended up happening was then we trained on what the sales team needed to do on these, right? Instead
Hmm.
of a 12% ratio, we got up to 22% on the close rate.
Hmm.
So we metrics will tell you your deal. So for an individual, we want to track the metrics that matter. There's dozens of metrics. I mean, it could be hundreds in a in a,
Sure.
in a process.
Yeah, the
So, but
vanity
for like,
metrics and the ones that truly matter, which is
yeah,
I
yeah,
love that you're diving into this because so many times, especially in home service, and sorry to cut you off there, but it just makes
yeah.
me think, especially in home services, so many companies out there, and I've been on a tear about this lately, actually. So many companies will put up these crazy vanity metrics, and not expose what's going on behind the scenes, either
Yeah,
with, hey, our salespeople do these crazy numbers, or maybe the company overall, here was our volume, but they're not saying, well, yeah, but we only took home 2% net.
right.
So is it not, I could earn more working for somebody else than what I pay myself as an owner. But boy, we did 30 million this year. It sounds great. We've got 800 trucks on the road.
Yeah, and all this stress and all this stuff going on, but I don't have what I'm looking for, and that's not what I got into business in the first
Hmm.
place for, right? We just on the sales level,
Hmm.
we have a mutual friend. I won't mention that friend's name on this, but this person was just telling me that a goal wants to sell $4 million a year
Hmm.
on the personal and having trouble hitting the goal, but close rate is 70 plus percent.
Ooh,
So
so that's solid.
really good, right?
Hmm.
And I said to this individual, I said, why aren't you, are you getting enough lead flow?
Hmm.
And stated back to me, no, I'm
Sure.
getting a certain amount of lead flow. What do I do?
Hmm.
And I said, tell me about the company. And the person did. And I said, so they have a new sales manager and a new executive and the owner. I said, go to the owner and ask the owner how many of the other salespeople are closing at 70%.
Yeah, no joke.
Right? And he said, what? I said, yeah, go do this and tell the sales manager this and the executive manager this, but go to the owner because the owner is going to care.
Hmm.
I'm not saying the sales manager won't care. I'm saying just going to care differently.
Sure.
Right. And the sales manager is new, so there's no history. So go to the owner and ask that question and then say, from a business perspective, I want to ask this question not to be rude, but don't you think that if I'm closing at 70% and so other people are closing at like 18%, that you'd rather have me working the leads than those people? And I've got
Yeah.
a goal of $4 million, but I can't hit it this year because I'm stuck without the leads. And the company policies don't go out and get their own leads. They farm the leads for the people, right?
Sure.
So that's an example of looking at a metric.
Hmm.
And so we've got to measure our metrics. And so as an individual, you want to measure things like how many outbound touches are you making with people, not physical touches, not creepy
Hmm.
stuff, like how many outbound,
Sure.
you know, uh, you know, leads are being touched,
Hmm.
if you
Yeah.
will,
How many reach
through,
outs?
yeah, reach outs. Right. So how many reach outs are we doing? And then what's the connection rate to those reach outs?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Coming back out of the connection rate, how many responses are we getting? How many responses are negative, positive, and neutral?
Yeah.
Right? So we can measure things like that. Out of those responses, how many appointments are we getting? How many appointments are actually being kept? How many abandoned appointments? How many are
Hmm.
being kept? Right? How many last minute cancellations? You can measure all these metrics. They will tell you a story from there. And I'm just giving some raw metrics. So
Hmm.
from there, it's kind of like, what's the close rate from the appointment set?
Hmm.
Because if you are really good and you're getting like, 100 appointments set and your close rate is 2%, right? That tells me that either A, the lead quality is really bad,
Yeah. Atrocious.
or B, the person taking the leads really needs training,
Hmm. Training
right?
opportunity.
And so then what's the follow-up close rate? Because most people don't even pay attention to something like this, right?
True.
And then, what's the increased transactional value or the increased buying frequency, the increased, through our response, how many referrals we getting, i.e., how are
Hmm.
we expanding the sale, right? And, we can just keep measuring metrics like this through that process. And as we continue to keep measuring these metrics, it will tell us a story. This is how we work more efficiently.
Hmm. I love
Because
this.
doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result, the old definition, right,
Mhm.
of insanity, but doing things over and over that are working effectively and you're being efficient, but you're doing more stuff that isn't, and it's pulling your time away. Now you could take that time back and put it to the more efficient, more effective methodology.
Right.
Then we can learn how to automate it.
Right. Spend 80% of your time in the 20% that moves the needle the most.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Right. And so we can't do this with predictability, without measuring that. And folks, those things that get measured get paid attention to.
Hmm.
People respect what you inspect.
Hmm.
That's why every morning in the military, when I was in the morning, we went down for inspection,
Hmm.
right? You'd stand there and the same thing, do the same thing. They'd ask you the same questions over and over and over and over again. But I can tell you, through repetition of process, I mean, we used to carry M16 rifles, and I could disassemble that and assemble that and record breaking time in a snow lightning storm, right?
Probably blindfolded too, I'm sure.
Blindfolded,
Hmm.
yes, without question,
Just
because
like
it's
the
in the
movies.
dark, right?
Hmm.
And you just know how to do it. And guess what? They just didn't leave it alone. They still kept the inspection.
Hmm.
So it's the same process. So metrics are the first step of understanding. Well, firstly, a truthful goal is the first step. Then applying the metrics to that. Then the next step of this would be, how do we become a master prospector?
Hmm.
And the master
Mm.
prospector, Sam, will always outsell the master closer.
I love this conversation. It reminds me of one of the very first training way back in the day when it was just out of cassette. We were on CDs at least, but it was an old Zig Ziglar. We
What's a
were
cassette, Sam? I don't know what you're talking about,
for all
man.
the youngsters out there. But yeah, in fact, my first work truck, there was no radio all it was radio. And so I would literally carried my boombox with me in
Oh
boombox.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm again dating myself, but I had the CD player next to me in the seat. So I'm cranking it up, driving down the road. And it was an old Zig Ziglar, and it was the entire recording was on prospecting
yeah,
and the power of prospecting, which so many people most people nowadays don't even know what prospecting means.
yeah.
They just think marketing and advertising don't understand prospecting.
Right. So the for those who don't understand, I'll explain, because it's a very important concept to understand, right? So marketing is creating awareness. Prospecting is, think of it as direct sales, outreach to get something going,
Hmm.
right? Marketing there's all kinds of marketing, like there's branding, there's this, there's that. So analogous to the military, um, marketing is when you send your troops out into the field. That's prospecting. Marketing is all the air coverage
Hmm.
prior to them going out into the field. It's the scare the enemy, right? That this
Hmm.
is coming, right? It's like
Hmm.
boom, 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 right? And so marketing is really the brand. Marketing is the awareness to create brand and to create positioning.
Hmm.
So if you folks aren't out there in the public square and nobody knows your company name, nobody knows your company reputation, nobody knows anything, they've got to have a really big problem in order to say yes quickly.
Hmm.
But if you're in the trades business, for example, and people see your vans going by all the time, right? Um, you know, I won't name names, but here we've got one, that goes by all the time. I see him all the time, right?
Hmm.
And it's like, oh, I need plumbing. Let me call that one, right? Or
Right.
whatever, right?
Yeah, it's a sticky it sticks in your brain because you can see it and it's recognizable.
Yeah. So if we're not in the space and place of the people, and we're consistently creating that touch point,
Hmm.
then we're going to have less effective marketing. So marketing is out there creating that awareness and that understanding of who we are. Now, doing a talk, for example, you just go to, like, I don't know why more people in the trades business don't go to like the Chamber of Commerce or the Rotary Club or just something like that. That's so easy. They're looking for speakers all the time,
Tell me
right?
about it. I think at one point in time when we moved, I didn't know anybody. I joined five different networking groups and led two others. I
Yeah, well,
became I became famous in the area. Anybody that knew me knew that exactly what I did, and so I got referrals all the time from people.
and you don't go, if you're an HVAC company, you don't go to the chamber of commerce and go, oh, I'd like to talk about heating and air conditioning, right? I mean, it's like they're not interested in what helps the members of the
Hmm.
chamber, right? And then as you're doing that on whatever subject, I've done subjects on things like how do you, reduce the stress in your life through understanding these three simple concepts, right?
Hmm.
And I'm Doug C. Brown. I'm the founder, CEO of Sales Strategies. We're a company. Now, today we would say this: we're a company that helps anyone who wants to be in selling or selling to add an extra, $100,000 in income, whether they're on a sales team or the whole sales team or whatever.
Hmm.
And I'm here to teach you how you can reduce your business stress today within the
Hmm.
next 20 minutes of this conversation. So, just something simple like that. Like it doesn't have
Hmm.
to be like perfect, but then people come up to you afterwards and they go, "My gosh, that was helpful information. I really appreciate that. What do you do again?"
Hmm.
Right? Or, I've got a sales team that, is 14 people that I would love to have them increase that because when I win, they win, right? They win,
Hmm.
I win. So whatever it is, but if you're an HVAC company, they're going to ask you, what do you do? Well, I do, we help people do this in the HVAC company, and you collect cards and you follow up.
Hmm.
That's
Oh,
prospecting.
the F word, the dirty word.
Exactly.
I heard the best description of prospecting one time. It was from actually a guy who was training a door knocking team. He said prospecting is looking for the most likely buyer right now.
Mhm.
And that was brilliant because it's so different than sitting back and waiting. Everybody complains, oh, the leads are down, nobody's calling. Okay, well, so go find them. What
Well,
else are we doing? I mean, we're sitting around brainstorming. Well, let's just go do it. Let's just go get business.
and that definition, I actually wrote it down because it's really a great definition. The most likely buyer right now, the reason that people don't do prospecting is because of what we call the ideal right fit buyer, right?
Hmm.
They don't know who the ideal right fit buyer is.
Hmm.
So the whole idea is to get six new prospecting methods working at a high level over the next 12 months. Like if you have six methodologies working at a high level, you're going to have more business than you know what to do with as a salesperson.
Sure.
And the key is working more efficiently. And working more efficiently is understanding who the right fit buyer is. Because that's the prospecting you should be doing too.
Hmm.
Part of the challenge with door knocking per se is you just don't know who you're knocking on the door, right?
Sure.
So it might be like, surprise, there's a murderous clown behind the door, or
Right.
it might be like, surprise, my goodness, I just needed a roof, and thank goodness you walked through the door, or solar or whatever, right?
Hmm.
And and so if we can identify those things, like I was saying to that individual that we know um, well, I said, well, if you can convince them to allow you to go get your own business and generate your own leads, maybe they'll pay you a little more because you're self-generating and prospecting
Hmm.
versus just taking leads, right?
Sure.
And so what do you want to do? Who Look through all of your client base, who bought the quickest, who bought the most, who bought the easiest. Right? You can just start with those three little, thoughts.
Hmm.
And then it's like, okay, where do they come from? Well, in his case, they came from, an affluent neighborhood. They had the parameters around that. And I'm like, so now you want to prospect in affluent neighborhoods who have those characteristics,
Hmm.
right? Birds of a feather flock together was the old statement, right?
Absolutely. People know people like themselves. And so start there. Ask them, hey, who do you know we can help?
That's right. Because you can now generate, if they're not interested, you can generate a referral to somebody who's usually in like mind and like, state or stage.
Hmm.
And so then they make the referral, and then it's, and we all know that, the best referrals when they pick up the phone and call them and they say, hey, Jerry, I've got Doug here, and, he's saying a lot of great things about, XYZ. And I know we're looking for XYZ. Let me put Doug on the phone with you right
Hmm.
now. Okay, thank you. Right. And
100%.
then boom. So we want to get prospecting, and master prospector will always outsell the master closer. And, eventually we'd like to get these methodologies on automation if possible too,
Hmm.
right? So you can have six different ways working on automation, and then you can do some other things that because it's freeing up your time. I will tell you this: if you do what we're talking about on this thing right now, Sam, if people did what we're talking about, they
Hmm.
will have so much business coming in, they won't be able to handle it by themselves. They'll have to have
True.
junior reps
Hmm.
or other reps
100%.
that they're passing this off. I did this in the telecom business when I was in the telecom business and I was in the corporate environment.
Hmm.
I had 62 incoming calls a day coming in for business.
Holy moly.
Yeah. And I'm gonna try and be an arrogant and braggadocious. I was the
Hmm.
number one rep out of 300 and whatever it was, 333 people or whatever it was.
Sure.
To the point where the CEO would personally call me from this company, which was hundreds of millions of dollars at that time, and ask me how I'm doing and what can I do to help and all
Hmm.
this other stuff. Because what I was doing is we had teams of nine. I was outselling all nine combined.
Sure.
Then when I got to a place, I would then start pushing the leads off to these people, and they were closing and they were paying me a small percentage of an
Hmm.
override. And then our little team of nine was out selling like states of like New York.
The whole rest of the company. I'm
Right?
sure.
I mean, we're in New Hampshire. Who's in New Hampshire, right? I mean,
Hmm.
we had 1.2 million people in the whole state. I mean,
Hmm.
we're outselling all of New York,
Sure.
five, six teams in New York. And then so it was just we were getting recognition off this process. And it was all because what I'm telling people right now to do. And then what was happening is somebody knew somebody who knew somebody, and they introduced me to like this one company called Edwards and Kelsey. They sold, I think, a few years ago, but they were like the 11th largest engineering company in the United States or something like that. They did all the lighting for Chicago O'Hare and Airport. They did all the
Oh, wow.
like train stations. They did
Hmm.
huge projects. And I happened to have a friend that introduced me to this company and they liked me. And then they're like, well, hey, why don't we build a soccer stadium for your company and we'll co-brand together? I mean, it was crazy, right?
Wow.
They're like, why don't we're going to connect one airport to another airport. Why don't you guys take all the telecommunication services for all, we're lighting up this building with
Hmm.
450 different businesses in it. You take it all. And I'm like, what? Pinch myself, right?
Yes, sir. No problem. We got this.
Exactly. So you just don't know where it's going to lead.
Hmm.
I mean, I ended up with NASCAR as a client because what I'm telling people right now.
Sure. No doubt.
And so, so you become a master prospector, then you understand the ideal right fit buyer. You understand what the messaging is that you're supposed to have, what they want. It's all about what they want, not what about we want as a sales entity. And then what we do is we move in from that into, okay, how do we become now a master closer?
Hmm.
What's the conversation that we are going to be having? And most people are making this so complicated, right? Because they're trying to be a master closer and they
Hmm.
don't understand what the people want. So I'll be a master persuader. You know what I
Everybody
mean?
focuses on handling objections.
Yeah, yeah, well,
Like
which,
we're here,
if
like
you,
your objections don't even come up if you do the rest of the part
there
right.
you go, brother, right? I mean, it's like if you understand how to be a master communicator and a master closer, you might get an objection here and there, but you'll get them far less.
Hmm.
I just did two calls for that business I was telling you about and closed both of them.
Hmm.
And I got one objection out of each call.
Sure.
And frankly, I didn't know as much as I should know because I'm just kind of new into the process. But the reality is that it was one objection per call because I know what the other objections are because I was learning about them and I was heading them all off. And I'm like, oh, this is a new one. And it
Hmm.
came up twice. Metrics, hello.
Hmm.
And so now we put that into the setter process,
Hmm.
right? And the setter process heads that off before it even gets to. So all of this stuff really is holistic.
Hmm.
And as you said, it does objections sort of melt away.
Hmm.
But being a master communicator is also learning how to do objections. And we teach that, right? In the
Absolutely.
process. And Sam, as you know, I wrote a whole book on this, right? On the psychology and philosophy of objections, right? Because I want to take one subject that people were struggling with and like teach them what is an objection. Like nobody really knows. It's fear. It's
Hmm.
a fear manifesting itself into something that's emotional.
It is. They're scared to make the wrong decision, or they're scared that, all these things, that the stories they tell themselves from bad experiences or
Yeah.
past, or what
Yeah.
somebody else said that they don't have the actual experience of themselves yet, all these things.
And in the trades business especially, and I mean not to be disrespectful. I mean, I grew up as my dad owned electric motor and machinery repair. We worked
Hmm.
as electricians. Like I had a landscaping company of my own. I even dabbled in the roofing business for a while. So I'm going to say this from experience.
Hmm.
Most people selling in the trades business don't understand who their ideal right fit buyer is and do not understand how to convey value
Hmm.
in the way that the buyer is looking for. What do the buyer want, need, feel, fear, desire? Who are the
Hmm.
influencers are in the process? They don't understand these basic concepts. And so what they're doing is they're going in and like, yeah, I'll throw a proposal out.
Hmm.
And then guess what? They're calling 12 other people, folks, or five other people or whatever. And so now they get five or six proposals and they all look the same. And then the next stage that we teach people is, you know, never ending and personalized and meaningful follow up, right?
Hmm.
They're not doing that in the trades business. So what's the common denominator?
Hmm.
Proposals, price, because there's no established value other than that. Well, maybe I like this guy or this gal who came through a little bit more than others. So I'll give that person a little more, 5%, 10%. But the worst thing is like, I really like this person and she or he never even followed up.
Mm.
So I would have gone with her or
That-
him, but I,
It's
I don't
so
have
funny.
that. Now I got all these people I don't know. And it's like, okay, everything looks blue. Everything
Hmm.
seems to be blue. Price, convenience, right? They're going to revert to those two things. And then
That's it.
so, and the trades business is like, okay, well, my roof is $40,000 at say my home or whatever. And then somebody comes in at 45,000, 38,000, 34,000, 29,000. Well, hell, I'm going to talk to the one who's doing the 32 and the 29. I want to see what's the difference between the roof, right?
Hmm.
And then you find out they're using the same shingles.
Hmm.
And it's like, well, okay, I don't know anymore as a consumer. So here you go, 29 grand, bam, done.
Yep. And so they just commoditized themselves and didn't even
Yeah.
realize
Yeah. So, understanding the art of communication and how to do it as a master communicator, master closer, and then the follow-up components that need to be on in the process. And follow-up is just not after the sale or it's continuous.
it. Hmm.
It is the glue that holds relationships together.
Love this.
It is
Yes,
the
this is so cool. In fact, everybody's so. I'm going to plug your book real quick because it is in the so after the Boston event, after Relentless, I'm starting back up the Close It Now book club, which so
oh,
everybody listening, make sure I'll have plenty of information out there, and we'll have some signups to get everybody. It is for everybody in home services or anybody else who just wants to focus on business and sales and mindset and personal growth. But so Doug's book is called Win Win Selling: Unlocking the Power of Collaboration in Sales. Everybody, so
nope,
go.
nope. Unlocking the power of profitability
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, profitability. My bad.
by resolving objections. Yeah.
Yep, yep. Unlocking the power of profitability. Yes, correct. And so everybody go grab it. You can get a sneak peek and read ahead. But it's definitely good. It is in one of the probably first or second book in the list as we get back into the book club. So he literally did write the book on the power of profitability and sales. Everybody, we're not just making stuff up here.
The gentleman who did the forward for me was Russ Whitney.
Hmm.
And some people may or may not know Russ. Russ, billions of dollars, I mean, like big, big, big numbers, right?
Hmm.
He owned brands like Rich Dad, Poor Dad as a training company,
Right.
right? Things like that. And when I brought him the book, because I know him, he goes, not another sales book, right? He's like that, like, and I'm like, Russ, I just wrote it on this one thing. He goes, well, that's interesting. Let me read it.
Hmm.
And I read it, and he called me back, and he goes, I didn't know you could write. I'm like, he's forever harassing me, right?
Sure.
We're very good friends now.
Mhm.
And he goes, Doug, when I read this, I learned a lot. And this is a really well-written book. When I first read it, because it wasn't very long, because you can read this book in like, I don't know, a few hours, right? It's
Mhm.
not like he's like, I first thought maybe it was going to be a report, but it was thicker than a report. And he's like, this is like the real deal information about the psychology and the philosophy. And so I wanted to teach people how things happen, not just, hey, when somebody says this, say that. Because
100%.
when you do that, you don't know what I call the real it, as you know in the book. Like, what is the real thing that you're trying to resolve? And if you just say the wrong thing, then you push more fear or more anger or more whatever, right?
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, so objections are part of what we call in the master conversation, the communicator side of the thing. And you hit on the last one. I've got to send you some money here because you like just framed the last one for me. I appreciate it. Um, and it's really around mindset,
Hmm.
right? Not really around. It is mindset. It is really about conditioning our brain to accept larger thoughts
Hmm.
and we all have these frames that we have when we grew up. Whatever it might be. You might have grown up in a family that said, you know what, don't expect to be much more than whatever, right?
Hmm.
And we all want to serve the master template of love, so we start
Right.
buying into this stuff.
Money doesn't
I
grow on trees.
Money
All,
doesn't grow
all the
on
different
trees, right?
things.
Don't argue with anybody ever, and it's like, children to be seen but not heard, all the old crazy stuff. And it hit me one day where somebody grew up in an environment where it was always be the peacemaker.
Hmm.
And saying this crazy story, I don't know if I've ever told you this. Um, so listening to this real estate agent, this sale on this home is like $2.7 million at the
Hmm.
time. And this was back in the 90s.
Ooh,
So I
yeah.
can only imagine that
So
that
we're
house
10 or
now is like
12 easy at this in
whatever it
today's
is,
money.
right?
Hmm.
Commission at that point was the house they actually listed it. So it was 6%, if I remember correctly, at that time. And so basically the real estate agent would get 3% and then a split of that. So let's just call it 2%,
Hmm.
right? On $2.7 million. So we're talking like
That's solid money.
47, 50 grand, right? On this commission, right? And husband and wife are in the thing. I'm listening to this. This company has, Shadow. And they're going back and forth. The wife wants the house. I mean, there's no question. She was an attorney.
Hmm.
They had children, and she came out to raise the two kids. The kids are little, and the husband was doing quite well as well. And she's selling him like crazy on this house.
Hmm.
Like, honey, listen, look where the pool is. We'll put your grill right here. You can
Hmm.
have your friends over. The kids will be swimming in the pool,
Yeah.
right? We'll
She's
have
already
all this
vision
community.
casting their life
Oh
forward in
God.
the
I mean, it
house.
was crazy. Up into the bedroom they go, honey, look at the view that looks at the mountains here.
Hmm.
Imagine what we're going to be feeling like sitting here. I mean, she's pouring it on like crazy. And he's going, I don't know, it's a lot of money.
Hmm.
And then she says these words, the wife, she goes, sweetheart, I'll tell you what, the mortgage should be something like this. We'll throw 20% down. The mortgage should be something like this. I'll go back to the law firm part-time and we'll have, your sister or whatever, we'll pay her to come in, watch the kids for, the period of time I'm working. I'll be at the house
Hmm.
and, we'll get a caretaker here for, our kids, a nanny, whatever. I'll pay for that out of my money that I'm getting out of there. And I'll cover the mortgage and everything completely.
Wow.
Like, how much more do you need? Like,
It's a no-brainer at this point.
right? And he's going, that's a very interesting proposition. And then the real estate agent is listening to this, and you could see her like kind of cringing through the whole process because the husband and wife are going back and forth, back and forth. And he goes, well, hon, that could work, but I'm still a little concerned that you're not going to spend enough time with the kids. And the real estate agent says these words. Guys, this is a super important decision in your life. And I hear you going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I want to make a thing. Why don't you guys, think this over and, go out to dinner, spend a couple days, think it over. I don't want any stress or contention in your relationship. I want to make sure that this is the right thing for you.
Ooh,
And I swear, Sam, if I could have
ouch.
kicked her, I would have kicked. You know what I mean? And I'm like, oh my gosh, this
My
thing was
brain's
like,
going to like, hey, tell you guys, why don't we do this? Let I will call for catering. We'll bring it in. You guys sit right here and overlook those mountains. You can right here at dinner and just visualize what it would be like so you get the experience of what it'd be like in this house.
yeah,
That's where my brain went.
yeah, of course, And by the
I'll
way,
pay
I'll
for
have them
this
pick up
steak dinner.
swimsuits for the
Got it.
kids.
Yeah,
Anyways, here's what happened. 2 days later, the real estate agent follows up. No return call.
of course not.
Right? Keeps following up, keeps following up, keeps following up. Finally, about a week after the 2 days, so that we're talking 9 days now,
Sure.
they get the people on the call. They get the people on the phone. They go, "Hey, what happened?" Oh, well, we talked about it as you said, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. We loved the house. It was amazing. And she said, well, okay, well, if you love the house, it's been time. Why don't we just wrap this thing up? It's still on the market. They said, we we can't. And she said, well, what do you mean? And they said, um, we already bought another house. Really? Where? Oh,
Hmm.
like on Topanga Canyon Road, in the same general area.
Sure.
We found this house. And she's like, wait a minute, that's kind of a more upscale neighborhood than what we were looking at. And they go, yeah. And yeah, she goes, wait a minute, what's the address? And she looked up the address. She goes, guys, that house was listed for $4.2 million. And they said, yeah, we bought it.
Hmm.
So she had a guaranteed $2.7 million sale because she internally had a frame that she had to be the peacemaker.
Yep.
And they went out and actually bought a $4.2 million house that somebody was getting 2% on or 3% on, right? Who
Hmm.
made, I mean, $80,000 in
Yeah. Now they're
commission,
pushing almost six-figure commission.
right? And it's like this is what happens when we don't work on our brain, on our mindset, because if we're got things that are tripping us up as we go along, if you grew up in a place you don't like rejection and you're going to go door knocking, as we were talking about, Sam,
Hmm.
you ain't going to last long in the door knocking if you don't adjust what the association to what's going on
Right.
is.
Hmm.
And so we're consistently, I should say, working on all these triggers with people. Because that guy who went from 140,000 to 2.1 million, that was a big part of what happened
Hmm.
because he would tell fabricated stories.
Oh no.
Right,
It's one of the first tenets of sales is don't lie, cheat, or steal.
right. He was doing it a lot. So we did just a very quick exercise, very easy over a couple of week period. And he came back to me and I said, how you doing with this? Right. Because I knew he was reporting his numbers, metrics, folks.
Hmm.
And he said to me, he goes, Doug, I've come to the conclusion. I said, what? He goes, I'm an effing liar.
Well, awareness is step one.
And not only was he lying to his clientele, and he was lying to himself,
Hmm.
he was lying to his spouse,
Hmm.
he was lying to everybody in his family. And when we got to the root of it, it was fear.
Hmm.
And the moment he stopped doing that, he became his authentic self. And he's a lovable, likable guy. And so now it was like people would ask him questions and he'd tell them the truth. He's like, listen, you know what? Will this absolutely work for me? Yes, but I have some concerns. And here's the concerns I have where it won't work for you.
Hmm.
Right. And so if these aren't considerations, that need to be had and you're going to do your part and we do our part, then I don't have any concerns that it won't work. But I do have these three things. So let's talk about it.
Sure.
And so he was closing more business than he ever thought of.
Just ultimate transparency.
Yeah. And so that's the system, right? The process of how to predictably grow your sales revenue and how to
Hmm.
predictably grow your income and how to do it more effectively and more efficiently.
Hmm.
And I've never, the only, without question, the only place I've not seen it really work great, it still worked, but not like I have high expectations for people, right? So
Sure.
but is maybe like in the place that people aren't reaching out to having conversations with people.
Hmm.
So like an e-com business that they're just kind of staying behind the curtain or whatever. The
Right.
metrics work great. We can dial things in, but it's not as effective
Hmm.
as the other types of businesses.
Sure. Anything where we have to generate business that's not just attraction style.
Yeah, I mean, but even an e-com business, like you can generate
Hmm.
business on an e-com business, but when it becomes more of a value complex sale, they got to talk to people. So
Sure.
it works great in those businesses.
Hmm.
But I'm talking about the ones who are selling like $100 items or
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like it's
Buy
not,
my $20, $25 t-shirt.
yeah, exactly, right? There are other things. Metrics work great for that.
Hmm.
Right? The metrics are amazing. And if you own an e-com business and you're not tracking your metrics, or you have a sales team or you're a solo seller and you're not tracking your metrics, man, there's so much bleed happening in that process.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but they work amazingly well. But the whole system together works great. And especially with people going outbound or having conversations with people,
Sure.
that works the best.
Oh, this is so good. So good. I know that we could talk about this forever. And for everybody listening, this episode is releasing, you'll hear it on May 2nd. It's releasing the day, we're recording today on May 1st. So it's going to release tomorrow, which you'll hear it on May 2nd. So you do still have time to get to Boston to the event where Doug's going to be diving in. He's got 90 minutes on this. He's going to dive in and give some very actionable steps here.
I know you're putting me on the spot here. 90 minutes. I got to teach a lot of good stuff for 90
Yeah,
minutes, right? Keep people.
absolutely. Well,
Um,
let's make it worth your while here too. So if everybody that if this makes sense to you, if you've resonated with this, reach out. So first of all, how can everybody get a hold of you? Because I would love to get some individuals and groups connected because it doesn't matter what industry you're in. It doesn't matter if you're in HVAC or plumbing or electrical or garage doors or solar irrigation, you name it. What everybody that's in this group, um, Doug has worked with your industry more than likely, for the most part, or something very very similar, and it really carries through. It's the mindset, it's the principles. When you replace one widget with another, it doesn't really matter. He's helped people sell everything from sandwiches to race cars. So so how can
and,
people get a hold of you, Doug?
and that's true. Actually, I work with Jason's Deli, right? And we got
Hmm.
a really good bump for Jason's Deli. So yeah, we did sell sandwiches and chocolate chip cookies and I did work, with NASCAR and others.
Hmm.
So and certainly the trades that you mentioned, I've definitely have worked in all of those. And some I'm under non-disclosure. I can't say, but I mean, it's some very well-known brands and in
Sure.
that industry as well. And I think Sam, I mean, I'll give my contact information, but I really think they ought to come to the event,
100%.
right? Because it's not just like if they love this conversation, there's so many other people that are going to be just conveying so much information
Hmm.
that is all practical and usable. So, but if they want to reach out to me directly, they can just shoot me an email at doug@ceosalesstrategies.com.
Love it.
And we do some master classes, as you know, on like follow up, and we do some master classes on predictable revenue as well.
Hmm.
But I would absolutely recommend that people come. And by the way, the weather is cherry. It's beautiful here now. Um, and I'm fortunate that I don't live that far from where you're doing it in
Hmm.
Boston, right? So it's like 45 minutes. But I can tell you that, people are out and they're sunbathing and it's not too hot, it's not too cold. It's like perfect weather.
Beautiful.
Um,
And I did hear
and
there's
yeah.
a Texas Rangers and Red Sox game on Tuesday night of the week of the event.
Oh no.
I
Oh no.
did,
That's gonna
yes.
be
But I had to list the Rangers first since I'm from Texas.
that's it's a good time of year to go to baseball.
Yeah.
But we can't because you'll be at the event, right?
Yeah, of
So
course. Well, there's a whole season. There's only 3 days of this event.
that's funny. Yeah, so that would be the best. They can check me out at Doug Brown 123 on LinkedIn. Or just type in Doug C. Brown revenue growth.
Mhm.
There's tons of I'll come up on I don't know how many pages, but certainly the first 6 to 10
Yeah,
pages
you can
easily.
absolutely. And for everybody that doesn't really give everybody your Instagram handle as well, and then I'll emphasize why here in a second.
Well, why don't you give him my Instagram
Oh
handle?
yeah,
Because
here, let me just look it up real quick. I want to make sure because
I
the reason I bring this up, everybody, is I want you to understand the magnitude of the guest that we have on today, because his history is so incredible. He does have 1.1 million followers on Instagram. 1.1 million. So that's the magnitude of who we are so honored to have his time on the guest today. But so his Instagram handle is super simple. It's Doug C Brown underscore. So
yeah.
Doug C Brown underscore. He does have a blue check, of course. Anyone has over 1 million followers, I'd better have a blue check. And so the amount of value that this gentleman brings. And if you've never listened to his, I was a guest on CEO Sales Strategies podcast. Make sure you listen to that show as well because they're nice and short. They're usually about 30 minutes or so, 20 to 30 minutes. And the level of guests that he has on his show are incredible. I instantly became a fan of the show, and I don't know how many episodes I've listened to at this point, and I learn something every single time as well.
Yeah, and so do I, Sam. Like when I do them,
Hmm.
right? So I want people to understand that no matter what level you are, like, I know billionaires, like,
Hmm.
people like, I mean, we had the guy on who founded Deloitte on our podcast, right? I was like, um, it was called Braxton Industries, Thomas Dorley Jr. And I'm like, I'm at awe that
Uh-huh.
that this gentleman wants to get on. I mean, we had the founder and CEO of 1-800 Got Junk on the podcast, right? And
Wow.
so, I mean, how can you not learn things from people like that? And the crazy part about this is, and I think it's, this goes back to mindset, and I want to just keep drilling this part home. You can do all the mechanics and everything right, but if your mind is not open
Hmm.
to this expansion, then what ends up happening is we end up kind of self-sabotaging that
Yeah.
expansion.
Yeah.
Right? Like I never imagined that when I first started out that we'd have 1.1 million followers on that. We have like, I don't know, something like 800 or something thousand on Facebook. And,
Hmm.
like, oh, I'm sorry, Meta, don't sue me, Facebook.
Or whatever they call it next week.
But exactly. Yeah. But here's the thing, like what I've learned over life is if you're doing something and you have a fulfillment at doing it, and there's a purpose-driven process behind this, and you work your mind around that, you're going to make money no matter what.
Hmm.
But when you upgrade your skills and the application of those skills, the weird part is, and I've seen this happen with many of my friends, um, is all of a sudden there's like this weird humility that comes into life because it's like I got one friend right now. In one of his accounts, he was telling me the other day, is like it grows to 8 to 10% a year, tax free. He's
Hmm.
got $20 million in the account. And I'm like, well, dude, peel a little off for brotherly love here, like I'm just joking
Yeah.
with him. It's like I'll pay the taxes on it, right? Like
Yeah.
that type of thing. But it's like the guy's so humble. He's like, it's like, yeah, whatever, right? And he's
Hmm.
probably got, I don't know how many accounts he's got like this. He's got more than one, I can tell you that.
Sure.
Yeah, you can fly private planes or whatever. So some of these people, they go that direction, and those are the people I love to hang out with. And on any level, doesn't
Hmm.
mean that you have to be wealthy. And what I want people to understand is, unless we open up the mind to the possibilities of stuff like this. Because I
Hmm.
can tell you, interviewing these people, hanging around with these people, none of them started thinking, oh, I'm going to be the biggest, consulting company on the planet. I mean, they
Hmm.
didn't start out that way. They started out like everybody else. I'm trying to make a living for my family. A few
Right.
thought maybe. I don't know. I haven't had the chance to interview like Jeff Bezos. I really would like to know. Did he
Mhm.
really think world domination was possible back
Yeah.
then, right?
Where was the vision, the famous picture of him sitting in the office with the spray painted Amazon sign, next to
Yeah.
his desk,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
What was the vision then? What did it look like?
Well, I mean, Sam, he was door knocking to raise funds,
Yeah.
right? So,
So
and
yet
and
again, for everybody that says door knocking doesn't work, a guy that was the richest person in the world for a while door knocked to raise funds for his company.
I have a gentleman I used to know, same last name as mine. I won't mention his name because he'll punch me out. Um, but he actually, in the origin, when they were door knocking type play for Staples,
Hmm.
when like penny stocks on Staple, like pink sheet state, right? And he said no. He's like, I can't ever see an owner or CEO of a company going and buying office supplies at Staples.
Hmm.
Well, they're Staples today, right? I mean, so the point being is that we all make mistakes. We have some wins, but when you're starting out, sometimes people won't believe in you. And if you're starting out in sales or you're in a place in sales and you're having a little bit of a challenge, some people aren't going to believe in what you're trying to do.
Hmm.
And that's okay. You've got to believe in yourself. And the only way to do that is you got to challenge the current paradigms that happen in your life
Sure.
because there's a difference between you thinking something and you taking that thought and putting a label on yourself.
Hmm.
The moment you put that label on yourself, it sticks.
Hmm.
And so what we want to do is be able to have that as peel off label and
Ooh.
get rid of that label. And then you remove the drag that, because all airplanes need thrust, lift, and drag, right?
Hmm.
But you lower the drag so you can fly higher, faster, quicker with less fuel, et cetera.
Hmm. I love this. You what you were just talking about there. This is going to rabbit trail us into something else real
Yeah,
quick.
yeah, we should probably.
I'm doing a session. So at the event, I'm doing a session on belief and identity, and another gentleman that's actually going to be there, Scott Sylvan Bell. He's also doing a session on identity and what it takes to have the mindset of a champion, the mindset of sales. And it,
I,
it all comes from our thoughts. When we are who we believe we are, and the results, our outcomes come after that. And so we're going to really deep dive into how to change your thoughts, which direct your belief about yourself, and then your belief creates your identity, and then out of your identity, that's where the outcome happen. It's not the other way around everybody thinks.
and you got to have a reason why you want to do it, right? That's not to promote Simon Chinook or whatever his name, right?
Mhm.
Sinek or whatever it is.
Yeah, Simon Sinek.
But but the there's and not to plug my podcast, but this is a great value episode. There's a gentleman called Dustin Gutowski,
Hmm.
and he in a very short period of time built a $50 million roofing company.
Ooh, yeah.
And he, at the time he started it, was driving around delivering pizzas in between door knocking.
Ooh, that's grind.
and and he started out because he had this huge why. He had, he wanted to be a good dad and a good husband, and
Hmm.
and he grew up in a really rough environment that would shape anybody's brain to say you're not really, kind of like the Oprah Winfrey type of environment.
Hmm.
If anybody knows about that, she grew up in a very, very
Hmm.
hard environment,
Yeah,
and
definite hard backstory.
yeah, and so if they can do it, and you're, how do I say this kindly? If,
It can, however you want to say it on this show.
if you're in a self pity party place, got to get out of it
Hmm.
because that label that I'm the victim of this, or I'm not smart enough, or I tried this before and it'll never work. So I'm the guy who, or gal who doesn't, who fails.
Hmm.
And you label yourself as that, you're going to see yourself in that frame, just like you put your picture in a frame.
Hmm.
And what you're missing is what's outside the frame. If you're looking through binoculars and you can only see like your hands are up like that, you can only see what's in the lens of the binoculars. But then if I take the binoculars off,
Hmm.
you can see a wider field and you can go, wow, I didn't know a farm was over there. I didn't know there was a little goat over here or whatever,
Hmm.
right? And you see different things. When you put these labels on, you're putting the binoculars on
Hmm.
and you're narrowing your field. And that's awesome when you put labels on, I'm courageous, I'm successful, I'm going to be this type of individual, and you're literally labeling yourself with positivity.
Yes.
And that's awesome, right? Because those labels you will act as if.
Hmm.
And I can tell people this because Sam, I know the moment it happened to me. I was in the military and they were training us.
Hmm.
And then we had to run at live machine gun fire.
Ooh,
Yeah, that was an eye-opening experience. I can tell
no
you that
doubt.
right
Life
now.
flashed before your eyes, right?
And I remember clearly the moment that when they were training us, and we're all running toward the machine gun fire because
Hmm.
that's what they're teaching us because it's a technique to like otherwise you got a wide field and they'll just pick you off, right? And I'm running, I'm like, why the hell are we running toward this?
Hmm.
That's what's going through my brain. I'm like, no, keep going because this is the mission, right?
Hmm.
Then when it happened for real, it was still a shock,
Hmm.
but you had the label of, okay, this is what we got to do.
Sure.
And people survived it. So I just think that, it's, by the way, folks, no one's going to throw you out their third bedroom window because they say no to you because you offered windows in their house, right? I
True.
mean, I suggest that with high probability, that's never going to happen, right?
Hmm.
So the most they're going to say is no. And, so just take it for what it's worth. Be careful of the labels that we put on ourselves. And
Hmm.
Sam, I'm so grateful that you and he are doing that because this is a big part of being successful.
Hmm.
And I mean, I can tell you out of those 36 businesses, and now that I didn't even know 37, 38 coming up,
Hmm.
not all of them were successful. And there were some very, very like learning lessons that people would ask me like, why did you get back up off the ground and do that? And it's because that's who I am.
Hmm.
That
Yeah.
remember that song, I get knocked down and I get back up again,
Yeah.
that Chumbawamba song or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every once in a while, I'll play that just to kind of
Yeah.
remind myself that that's because I
Because that's who
know
you are, right? It's your identity.
it's my identity and the labels that I put on myself. And the reason I did that is because having exposure to all these great CEOs and business owners and they went through heck and back on some
Hmm.
of these things and they failed numerous times before they actually succeeded. And even when they succeeded, they failed in numerous things
Hmm. Hmm.
along the pathway of success. And so, doesn't mean you have to be them, but in your own world, what are you going to actually take and are you going to get knocked down and get back up again? Because it's not that you get knocked down that's the problem.
Right.
It's the recovery time for most people.
Hmm.
The shorter your recovery time, the better you are, the better off you are.
I love it. We could not have ended on a better note. For everybody listening, I will make sure to get the link to the episode that Doug was talking about with the founder of the roofing company. That'll be in the show notes. So make sure to click that and listen to that episode. Massive value there. And like I said, order the book, listen to the podcast, and definitely check out some of the products that CEO Sales Strategies has to offer because I can tell you all I'm going to take the master classes. Absolutely, when you choose to be a lifelong learner, you can always learn from the people who have gone before you and have done what you want to do. And so follow the lead, everybody. Success leaves clues. So
Yeah.
thanks for being on the show, man. Any
Hey,
last things that you want to impart to everybody before we sign off here?
yeah, make sure you put the link to the event. Come to the
Yes.
event.
Yeah, closeitnowbootcamp.com. That's where you get your tickets. Yeah, it's gonna
Awesome.
be
Thanks for
it's
having
gonna
me
be
on,
awesome.
Sam.
Yes, sir. Thanks for being here. For everybody, yep, closeitnowbootcamp.com. It's gonna be an incredible time. The first of a movement. This is not just another event. This is not just, we're not just sales training here. We're creating a movement of something that is different and new. And it's been a long time coming. I've said for a long time, an idea whose time has come can't be stopped. And that is 100% what's happening here in a way that I've never seen before. And the way people are coming together to support this is has been pretty mind blowing. And so I'm grateful, and I know that lives will literally be changed out of it. And so thanks for being on the show. I cannot wait to see you this next week. Here in just a handful of days, we'll be able to
Yeah,
break bread together in person.
absolutely.
And yeah, we're definitely gonna make some serious impact. So as you know, everybody, this is how we always sign off. Make sure you are intentional with what you do. You do have the ability to change the labels that you put on yourself. Peel off that old negative label and write your new story. This is the first day of the rest of your life. What are you going to do with it? And I implore you, go be somebody worth buying from.